Who believed in you before you believed in yourself? For me, it was the women who saw something in me when I was just starting out. 20 years and 5 businesses later, I'm still here because they lifted me up when I needed it most. I'm Tania Gomez, and this is She Shapes Tomorrow, brought to you by Tania Gomez Consulting and Kismet, proudly sponsored by SN Services. Every episode, we sit down with women who are changing lives, building communities, and raising up the next generation. Women who'll remind you what's possible when we stop trying to do it alone. This year's International Women's Day theme is Give to Gain, and these stories will show you exactly what that looks like. Let's get into it. Welcome to She Shapes Tomorrow, the International Women's Day podcast. I'm your host, Tania Gomez, and today I'm joined by my beautiful friend, Sarah Broad. Sarah Broad is a registered nurse and managing director of the Nurse Next Door Perth North franchise and has worked in the care sector for many years. She was the first franchisee for Nurse Next Door in Perth and has worked very hard over the last few years building out her franchise. She's also a mother of children on the NDIS and was part of the rollout of the NDIS in Victoria. Welcome, Sarah. It's so lovely to have you here today.
Hi, Tania. Thanks for having me. I feel really privileged to be a part of this podcast and look forward to having a chat.
Yeah, always. I always love chatting with you and always go off on a million different tangents. So I'm sure that today will be no different. I wanted to first talk to you about your decision to become a nurse, and I guess where that came from in your life. Was that, you know, was there someone in your life that was a nurse? Did you always want to be a nurse? I guess for me, you know, as you know, my mum is a nurse, and I've always really admired nurses' ability to care for people at their worst. And it's just certainly nothing. It's always been discouraged, I guess, because my mum's a nurse. She never wanted me to be a nurse. But I really can't imagine the amount of empathy that you would need every day and the amount of patience that you would need to really work with people at their worst every single day. And I guess you see some really amazing things as well. But I'm really fascinated to know why you wanted to be a nurse.
Well, I actually never wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be a doctor. And I think that it kind of stems from the same desire, I guess, to really help people. And I was really fascinated by the body and how it worked. And, you know, I spent a lot of my teenage years in and out of hospitals. And so I guess I had lots of contact with medical professionals, nurses, some good, some not so good. And so I think that just further kind of reinforced you know, my desire to be involved in the medical field. I think from around year 8, I really, really wanted to be a doctor. So everything that I did, all the decisions that I made were to get into medicine. So I did extra study, you know, did volunteer work, you know, played instruments, you know, did all the normal things. And then at the time, there was only 2 universities that offered medicine in Melbourne, and I just missed out from getting into either one. And at the time, my mum was also really disappointed. And I remember going, well, I'm just going to do nursing just to kind of spite her. And so that was, she'll hate hearing me say this. And so in the end, you know, I thought, well, I'll start nursing and then I'll eventually, you know, transfer and get into medicine. So at the time, Deakin University in Melbourne was the first university to offer a double degree in nursing. So it was nursing and psychology. And I thought, oh, I'll just pick that. And hence, you know, I started, and quickly, you know, in the first year, really, you know, it was just the beginning of university training. And so it had a very academic focus, which really fit with where I was at. And then I did my placements and kind of really loved nursing. So, you know, from that point, didn't really have a desire to change my course.
Wow. Wow, that's really interesting. And you have kind of a unique perspective of the NDIS. You've kind of seen it from all different angles. You have children on the NDIS. You've also worked as an NDIS provider. You're part of the rollout, and you know worked to kind of help shape some of the scheme in Victoria. You know, tell us about why you decided to be an NDIS provider, and I suppose how the journey with your children has been part of that.
Yeah, I think when, you know, my daughter was 5 when the rollout of the NDIS occurred in Victoria. And I remember, you know, being a part of some focus groups and, you know, working. At the time I wasn't working in the disability space, but certainly, you know, was connected to it. And I remember thinking that people had so much hope. There was so much possibility around what the NDIS could bring for people or could offer people. And I think that was really palpable, you know, talking to parents who also had children with disabilities, who had, you know, been in state-based services, and there was so much riding on what the NDIS could offer people. And I remember just feeling like everyone had so much hope. And at the time, I was kind of really in the early stages of my daughter's journey, and I mean, I was not feeling so hopeful at the time. You know, I had worked with children with disabilities. You know, there was nothing that I was scared of in terms of how that journey might look. But I was just actually, as a parent, really like, well, how's this going to look for my child? How's this going to look for us as a family? And I think there was that grieving of, well, what does this mean for my daughter? You know, how is NDIS going to help her? I probably didn't come from, at that point in time, from a very hopeful perspective. But what I did then start to see was the opportunities, and the opportunities that children with disabilities may not otherwise have had, you know, if their parents weren't able to afford services and therapy. I guess, you know, I kind of started seeing that, you know, this could potentially really be transformative. And so that was kind of, you know, initially my thoughts. And then I guess, you know, time kind of evolved and, you know, the NDIS changed. I started seeing my daughter's journey, and that kind of had lots of ups and downs at the time. And so I think my desire to be involved in the NDIS from a professional perspective, so coming in and being an NDIS provider, was, I have seen over the years many, you know, I've interacted with providers on many different levels, whether it be personally or professionally, and, you know, I wanted something different. I wanted to be a part of something different, a service that, you know, I could be really proud of.
Yeah, yeah. Makes a lot of sense. It's an interesting perspective, I suppose, to see it from a skeptical view and then see that all the way through. Has the NDIS been transformative for your daughter?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes, because, you know, I mean, where she is today is not what I imagined back when she was a 4-year-old little girl. And, you know, I think that some of the opportunities that NDIS gave to her are what have really helped her and helped her to, you know, improve. And you know, maybe without NDIS as parents, we still would have engaged in some of those services, but maybe not as intensely as we did, because financially, you know, even just being able to work and manage appointments and things like that, there's so much involved. And so I guess, you know, the NDIS at the time, you know, enabled us to do and be engaged in things that maybe we wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when we're working in the NDIS space, we talk often about the challenges of the bureaucracy, working with the system, etc. And it's really nice to actually sit back and look at all of the positive as well, and just how lucky we are to have a scheme that focuses, on capacity building. And yeah, it's amazing that it has given those opportunities to you, but also to so many families. It's definitely definitely transformative and life-changing for people who couldn't afford therapies and other interventions previously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you've had a number of challenges in your life. You're just incredibly resilient, and every time I speak to you, I find out about some other challenge that you've overcome in your life, and that you just seem to take in your stride and move forwards, which is, in all these podcast interviews that I'm doing, just seems to be such the trait of women. We just seem to be these resilient characters who can take it all in our stride. But your journey is quite impressive, or quite amazing, at the number of things that you've kind of overcome, from having children with disability to your own injuries that you've had to recover from, multiple surgeries, becoming the first franchisee, supporting other franchisees, and also, running your own business every single day, which is not an easy thing to do. How do you keep going when there are so many challenges thrown at you all the time?
Good question. I have a really, really supportive husband. So I think I would be remiss if I didn't give him credit. None of this would actually be possible without him. And I think sometimes, we're so hard on ourselves when things happen, and we reflect a lot, and, we kind of run over things. And I guess sometimes, I surprise myself that I've managed to kind of get through some of these hurdles. I think, one of the things that I always really try and focus on is why am I doing this? What purpose does it bring to me? What is the greater kind of good? And I guess that is always in the back of my mind when things get really hard. And I mean, I do this because I genuinely care about the people that I'm supporting. And I also really want my children to see that, you can go through challenges in your life. You can, have really bad things happen, but you can also still keep moving forward, and, you can build something that, you're proud of, and that they can be proud of too. They see when times are really hard, they're also watching really closely. So I'm really aware that how I respond and react, and, and how I deal with these challenges that kind of pop up, my children are silently kind of watching me on the sidelines. And so I hope that that encourages them that, life isn't always perfect, but, you can still achieve great things in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And why did you decide to leave the comfort of nursing and secure employment to pursue running a business?
I ask myself this question every day as well. Because, I'm sometimes 50-50 on, what kind of the outcome, what the outcome's going to be. But I mean, it was a decision that was kind of forced on me, I guess, in some ways. I had to leave the bedside due to a workplace injury that happened. I was physically assaulted as a nurse, which resulted in quite a significant injury to my knee, which over time impacted my physical capacity to work at the bedside. By the time sort of that progressed, I was more in leadership and management. However, having my daughter and needing to kind of go to lots of therapies and things like that. It wasn't really conducive to the hours that I was pulling, in management. And so, again, coming back to bedside nursing was really not physically an option. And so it was actually, so at that time I was like, had come to the conclusion that I could no longer be a nurse. The type of nursing that, I was, that is my kind of specialty, was really just not going to be possible with my injuries. So at the time I thought, well, I'll do what I do best, which is pivot and do something different. And I've got this. And I embarked on a JD of law, and did half of that, did half a law degree, and then decided that really wasn't, I wasn't going to be able to care for people. I wasn't going to be able to use all these skills that I had spent years of study, and all my knowledge and skills would just kind of go. And so it was at that point that we kind of entered into COVID, in Melbourne. And I also had a baby. And so, I wasn't doing much of anything other than kind of, raising a baby, homeschooling children. And it was only when we kind of got out of COVID, and we decided to, move to Western Australia, that I then suddenly went into, I really need to do something. I was kind of getting to the stage where I felt like if I didn't decide what my next kind of step was in my career, there was that panic of, well, what am I going to do? And so again, I really started thinking about, well, how can I use the skills that I have, and the knowledge that I have, and how can I make that into something that will fit, with my physical capabilities, with my children, and also being able to spend the time that was needed to kind of take them to therapies and things like that. And Nurse Next Door came up in my Facebook feed, and I was like, wow, I could combine everything that I know and love in one kind of spot. And that's how it evolved.
Yeah. And then you made the big life change to move from the city of Melbourne to Perth and have a fourth baby all at once. And you've got quite an age span between your first child and your last child. What's the age gap?
So my oldest is 18 and my youngest is 3.
Yeah, so I think 10 years, and my 10-year gap is a lot, but yours is even bigger. Yeah. How did you manage all of those changes? New city, Perth has a bit of a reputation for being quite cliquey. Plus, you're having a fourth baby while you're recovering from an injury and starting a new business all at once. It kind of seems like a very condensed, stressful, but also, very exciting at the same time. Scary and exciting can be a very thin line between the two.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear people say this back to me now, and in recent weeks I've had to talk about this story quite a few times, and now I think, oh my God, how did I actually survive? Like, I had a very unexpected and unplanned fourth baby at the same time as moving to a different state. Had said baby, broke my ankle and started a business in a moon boot with no capacity to drive or to do much of anything. And really, when I think about it, I'm like, it could have been the biggest recipe for disaster, going around. And I think, one of the things that I think I'm really good at is I just didn't see that this could not work. It didn't enter my mind at the time that this would not work or could not work, or I didn't sort of see that there was an option to not make it work. And so I just kind of went about doing what I could to make it work in a very imperfect setting, situation. It was really stressful, I think, when I look back at it. But I think I've always been someone who kind of sees the glass half full. And from there, I kind of go, well, how can I, what can I do to make this better? How can I improve my situation? And so I think that's what I did. And so by the time, the first kind of 2 months were a bit rocky when I started the business, and it was definitely slow. And I think, my turning point was by the time I could drive, and I was not able to drive for a long time, but I remember I was able to drive, and so I did a lot of Facebook stuff in the early kind of weeks of my business, and up popped a networking group. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go. I'm going to meet other people, and that's going to be good for me, because by this stage, really, I only had my family. I didn't know anyone. I was meeting people that I was kind of onboarding for my business. But outside of that, I didn't have any connections with people here in Perth. So I was sort of thinking to myself, I'll meet other business owners. I'll get to professionally start making connections, and, I'll just see how I go. And I remember the morning of, it was a really stressful morning. There was a few things happening, and I almost didn't go. And then I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go. This might be really life-changing for me. Who knows, and off I went. And as you know, that was the day that I met you and Paul, and lots of other people that I still am connected to today. And it was really life-changing. It gave me connections. It gave me hope and purpose. And that kind of started my journey, I think, where I had, the confidence to, put myself out there and just really, in the face of what was, like a really, really, not a recipe for success. And I would kind of, do my best to kind of, keep going day by day.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad that you came, because when I had just moved to Perth, at the same time as you, and I had I didn't know anybody in Perth either. And I don't think I had even met Paul before that. Actually, I think I met him once, and we had a coffee maybe a couple of days prior to his networking event. And I got to meet you. And, I tell everyone that you're my only Perth friend, which offends your husband and offends Paul and a few other people. But yeah, it's I think that's the benefit also. Like I said, that Perth can be cliquey. I think the benefit also is it's quite a small town, so you do get to create some friends quite quickly, and you get to see most people at most events. You get to see them quite a lot after a while, where in Sydney you can go to 50 events and you'll see 50 different sets of people. In Perth, there's a couple of different areas in Perth, but generally there's the bulk of people will be at most of the events. So it's a nice way to create connections also.
Yeah.
Okay, so the theme for International Women's Day in 2026 is Give to Gain. What does Give to Gain mean to you with all the experiences you've had as a nurse, as a mom, as a businesswoman?
I think that I've always, a lot of people would describe me as being someone who is very generous, generous with my time, with training, with kind of supporting people. And I guess, I don't really see it as being generous. It's just part of who I am. And I think, as women, we are seen as people who give a lot. We give a lot to our families. We give a lot to our work, friends, family, often at the expense of ourselves sometimes. But, I see so much benefit and reward in sharing with others or giving to others. And, even when I think about, the feedback that we get from our clients, it all comes down to, really going that extra mile, doing things for people, not expecting anything in return. Sure, I could provide a service that offers X, and that person's still going to be happy with that. But I kind of go, well, if I can give them X, Y, and Z, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I give them the best experience that I can, whether that's in making sure that I really understand what their care needs are, making sure that the people that I put in to support them give them everything that they want or need or hope for. So, I think that, by sharing and by giving, we actually get so much more back in return.
Yeah, I agree. When you look at the woman you are today, a successful business owner, a mum, you're supporting so many people in the community. Is there something that you would tell your younger self, maybe the young girl who missed out on being a doctor, about how your life would unfold?
Well, I'm really glad I'm not a doctor these days. I think that I would be way less hard on myself. And I think that, I would definitely tell myself that, I could, get through so much adversity, and I could, really have kind of, I don't know, reassured myself that, I would be okay. I think, despite having lots of resilience and kind of getting through really difficult things, along the way, I've probably been so hard on myself, or had moments where I was like, well, how am I going to get through this? And I think now when my older self looks back and says to myself, I could have given myself way less stress if I just trusted myself, or trusted my ability to kind of get through those times. And, I sort of look at myself and my family even now, and I think, wow, I spent so many sleepless nights wondering, if my daughter was going to be okay, and how she was, if I was going to be able to give her what she needed. And I look at her now, and as I'm going on this journey again with my younger children, I am way less hard on myself. And I kind of now really sort of, I don't worry as much about, their future, because I see how that worry didn't help me with my daughter. It just made me have lots of sleepless nights. Whereas now I trust that, we're doing all the things that we can, and, that they'll be okay too.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I think as parents, we want to stop our children from having any pain or any trauma or any bad experiences, and we want to wrap them up in cotton wool. But if I look back at my life, and the same with looking at your background and all of the stories that I've been hearing from these amazing women on this podcast, and you think, well, if those moments didn't happen, they are the moments that make us. The challenging moments are the moments that make you who you are. If you always had a perfect life with everything you ever needed and never had to try for anything, you wouldn't really get to test the strength and the courage of who you are. And that ultimately would make the world a less wonderful place. So it's hard, because we obviously don't want our children or ourselves to go through painful experiences, but it's almost needed to become the people you need to become.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that, if you look at some of the, the greatest people, or the things that the people that have achieved so much in their life, they have come from some sort of adversity. They've had something happen in their life that has shaped them. And I think, it's not to say that you can't be an amazing person if you have, a life that's not tainted by things or challenges. But I think those adversities or those challenges, they give you skills, or they make you develop resources that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have had to. And I think, it also gives you a really unique perspective. When I look at things, or when I am dealing with people, it's so easy to kind of think that your experience is, you know, it's hard, it's the worst. But I'm always amazed that then I meet other people and I realize that, you know, it's all about perspective, and, you know, everybody has challenges, and it's not, you know, my challenge is worse than your challenge, but it is around, you know, the resources that people have, whether it's their own internal resources or supports around them, that really determine, you know, how resilient they, or not how resilient they are, but how they can get through those challenging times. And I think that's the privilege we have in running, you know, businesses where we care for people, is that we have an opportunity to step in and really be instrumental in helping people achieve what they need, or, you know, giving them the support that they require to go on and do what it is that they want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've done quite some hard yards in business. You've had quite a few challenging staff, participant challenges, but you've still managed to make quite a successful business in just a couple of years. What would your advice be to new business owners about how to get through those first few years and, I guess, find your feet as a first-time business owner?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when I speak to lots of people in business, you know, there's always challenges, especially when you're in, you know, service running business, or you're dealing with people. I mean, you know, people are really unique, and the challenges that come with that, you know, some are common, and some are really, you know, dependent on the situation. I think some of the things that have been instrumental for me are the supports that I've had around me. So, I mean, obviously I'm really fortunate that, you know, being a part of a franchise means that I do have supports at many different levels. And that kind of, you know, helps and guides me from that business side of things. I then think I've been really, really lucky to have, you know, met people in this industry that know so much more than me, who help to guide me and are there as my kind of cheerleaders. You know, I think that, again, when I say that, you know, meeting you and Paul and the people that day was really life-changing, it has been because, you know, some of those toughest experiences that I've had in business, I've been able to share with you, with Paul, with those connections I made. And I think, you know, collectively, we are so much stronger when we collaborate and when we have people who, you know, can help guide us, or hearing other people's challenges. I mean, you know, everybody that I speak to has some kind of challenge running a business. And I think, you know, hearing that and being able to learn from other people's experiences is just, yeah, it's by far the biggest, you know, the biggest supportive measure that I could have ever taken in business. And then I think, you know, again, along the way, those mistakes I've made in business, although, you know, they were devastating, they've also helped, it's helped me learn what I need to do differently, or how I need to be differently as a leader. So as much and all, when I look back on them, I'm, you know, it's kind of painful, or, you know, I think, how did I do that? Or why did I do that? It's also taught me a lot. And maybe I wouldn't have, you know, maybe I wouldn't have learnt that otherwise. You know, I think I had to go through those experiences to kind of come out the other end. And now, you know, I've learnt from that, and I keep building on those experiences, keep defining me and shaping me as a leader. And so I think, although we always want to avoid bad things happening or making mistakes in business, I also think sometimes they're the biggest, you know, we learn so much from them. They actually teach us a lot.
Yeah, I agree. That's been awesome, Sarah. Thank you so much for your time. If there is someone listening who wants to get in touch and learn more about you or, Nurse Next Door, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so anyone can connect with me there, or you can go to the Nurse Next Door website, and there is a locations page, and you can find me there under Perth North.
Perfect. Thanks so much for your time, Sarah. It's been awesome, and I look forward to seeing you at the Perth International Women's Day.
Thanks, Tania. Bye.
Wasn't today's guest amazing? Imagine being in a room with over 100 women like her. That's our 2026 International Women's Day events, happening across Western Sydney, Gold Coast, Adelaide, and Perth this March. You'll meet women building businesses you want to learn from. Leaders are solving problems you're facing right now, and the kind of people who become your text at midnight support system. That's not networking, that's give to gain. Find your event at taniagomez.com.au. I'll be there, and I hope you will be too.